China do not want Iran to fail. Let's make that clear. China do not want Iran to fail the same way China do not want Russia to fail. This is the reason why China is taking in more than 89% of Iranian oil export, even though Iranian oil is under international sanction. And the way this was achieved is by, this is by the so-called dark fleet. These unregistered ships, they will go to Iran, they load up the ship, and they change their load and unload in some other location, like in some Southeast Asian countries, and then they rebrand those oil as coming from elsewhere, from Malaysia or Indonesia, and they send them to private independent refineries in China, mostly locally in Shandong province. Now, those private independent refineries, sometimes called the teacup refineries, they do that because they are willing to risk a US sanction for the margin, because they get the Iranian oil at a 15% discount. And for them, that's enough margin for them to risk sanction. And those private Chinese refineries, because their market is China, they don't have much exposure overseas. So U.S. sanction can't touch them, because all their transaction is done in Chinese yuan. So U.S. financial sanction that doesn't impact them. Their customer is Chinese. They're selling in China. They conduct their business in yuan, and so that's where 89% of Iranian oil goes. How it ends up in China. But if Chinese government really wants to, they could easily shut that down. But they didn't. They chose look the other way. Even though those independent private refinery actually compete with China's state-owned oil companies, because they're actually competitors. For the state-owned oil company like Sinopec, they probably want to shut down those operations because they're competing with them. But China decided to look the other. Chinese government is looking the other way, allowing those private refiners to take Iranian oil, because they understand this is a very important lifeline for Iran. So that's how China supports, just like the same way China supported Russia. But China would not flying weapons into Iran in the middle of the conflict. I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, why didn't China and Russia do more to help? First of all, you don't need to speak on behalf of Iran. If Iran need help, they can ask help. They would have asked for it from Iran and from Russia and China. They didn't, because on their own, Iran can handle Israel. Now, Israel, they can handle Israel on their own. Like the only scenario where Iran would need help if U.S. directly gets involved. Then, but before that happened, it's like Iran is not in a hurry to get help from. They're not panicking. They're like the problem is a lot of the BRICS and the multipolarity supporters. They get easily spooked and panic, because they in their mind they still think U.S. is this powerful Captain America, invincible. That will stomp on all our position. But you need to understand, U.S. is just like any other country. They also operate under resource and supply constraint, and there's real serious resource constraint on the U.S. empire at the moment, when they're essentially involving a two-front war. There's still a proxy conflict that's raging in Ukraine right now, and the fact that they had to shuffle around their air defense system from Ukraine to Israel tells you they do not have resources for a two-front war, and this is why Iran they got Israel handled on their own, no problem. And what happened with the U.S. involvement? It turns out it's a very typical Trump enterprise. This is because this is precedent for this too. In the Trump first term, that's exactly what he did. He launched cruise missiles against Syria. when he was under a lot of pressure by the deep state to do that, he just fired a bunch of missiles and he claimed victory. I did it, and he changed very little facts on the ground, right? But for Trump, it's all about PR. And Trump is unpredictable, but he's so predictable in his ways. This is why I called it, like, dude, this guy is gonna do a symbolic strike and claim victory. And then because for him, it's more important to deport immigrants in Los Angeles than to deal with East quagmire stuff. And so I think you're right. And this is people in the Middle East are also going to wake up to the fact that for decades, the assumption was with the U.S. support, Israel is kind of unstoppable. It's going on rampage. But now, for the first time, first time, it shows Israel cannot do its aggression with impunity. For the first time, they're getting missile rained on them on Tel Aviv and in Haifa, and in a serious number. So this is why Israel Defense Ministry put out statements like, "Oh, our war with Iran is not over, but we need to shift our focus on Gaza." Like they're focusing on their core competence right now. That's genocide, right? Genocide, that's their core competence. They can't really fight against a nation that can fight back.
Defenseless people. They don't have anything to fight for. And that's why shame on the Arab leaders, because maybe they need another Arab Spring. And as I said, guys, I will do a special video for you just regarding this one here. So now, before I'll move on to a next one, Carl, I want just to say one thing regarding the oil about China. I'm sure you're aware that Mr. Trump said now China can buy oil from Iran. It's like, who the heck are you to give the green light to countries to buy oil from whomever they want? So, but that's just on a side note, I wanted to mention this. Now, on a serious note, and I want to mention this to you, Carl, and just get your take on it. Regarding the conflict that took place and still taking place in the Middle East, or West Asia, that is this now, in your opinion, a defining moment for China regarding its role on the global stage? When I say global stage, I am referring to the global order, because China weighing in on something like this will have a tremendous consequence in either direction.
Well, I think it obviously shows. Even though the fact that a lot of people are screaming for China to step in is because, because everyone realized China can make a difference. They can tilt the power balance decisively in one direction. And this is why people say, "Oh, why did Xi Jinping deviate from Deng Xiaoping's policy?" Deng Xiaoping's policy had been hide your strength, bide your time. Why is China suddenly abandon that? I'm like, look, when you are the world's largest producing power, where are the world's largest manufacturing superpower, where can you hide? How can you pretend you are like a helpless third world country? You can't hide your strength, because your strength is plenty obvious for everyone to see. And right now, China is progressing all fronts in technology, in the military hardware, in economy. This is why there's a lot of panic in Washington, because they really see China threatening the dominant U.S. position worldwide. But all the response, they try to put a stop to that, try to stop China's progress, hasn't worked. And this is why they keep on giving airtime to people like Gordon Chan, because Gordon Chan tells them fairy tales that they like to hear, which is China is collapsing. It's this terrible, bad China that's very threatening, that's trying to do harm to us. But don't worry, they're collapsing. And because Gordon Chan tells them what they want to hear. This is why he has been, on CNN, on Fox News for 24 years, even though none of, he has suffered no real world consequences for all his bullshit, because even though he turned out to be wrong years after year, just because he is selling copium That's what US excels right now. The only only one area where US still lead China in the production is the production of copium.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, even in my days in Washington, and I was like, what is this guy spewing nonsense? And I was like, even the argument I made back then, Carl, and I kid you not, I still have a good friend still alive that I talked to back in 1991 when I started a conversation, and I said, do people in Washington aware of what lies ahead in the next 25 years? They're like, what are you talking about? It's like, you don't see what's coming, do you? And they didn't get it. So you kind of, when people couldn't understand the basics, you can get into some depth conversation with, because you realize you're going to just be wasting your energy. It might be useful to use it for something else.
David, in 1991, that was the year of the end of history.
That's
when Francis Fukuyama published the end of the
history. That is correct.
This is the ultimate end of the human evolution. Is America, with America sitting on top of the world. That's what people seriously bought into. Back then it was. But again, that was also a comforting fairy tale, and now we're just seeing that right now. Hello, my friends. I'm Carl Zha, and you're watching Silk and Steel podcast. Leave your comments below on what you think about this content and what would you like to see more on my channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.